Okay then. So yeah, aiming at a Cromwell on the move. I was aiming at the Cromwell. I actually didn't see the tracer. I didn't aim at the tracer. I fired on the move, and yeah, FE 304. Oh dear. Yeah. Gotta love arty, or do you? Hi folks, and welcome to the Ace Tanker for the 15cm SIG 33 SF auf Panzerkampfwagen 1 aus B. Woo, or it's also known as the Sturmpanzer 1 Bison, or quite simply, I'm just going to be calling it the Bison because it's a lot easier than having to keep on saying its full German name. But yeah, this is a very, very interesting tank, and yet it's another low-tier ace tanker for the Germans, and basically I took the Band-Aid approach to the low-tier ace tankers on the Germans. The Band-Aid approach being, of course, when you're wearing a Band-Aid and you've had it on for a long time, or in Europe sometimes we call it a plaster. We've had a plaster or a Band-Aid on, it's been on for a long time, and it's kind of glued itself to the hairs on your arm or wherever you've got happen to have it, and you're trying to remove this Band-Aid or remove this plaster, and you're removing it very slowly, and it's painful. So, you know, usually the advice is to rip it off quickly. So, yes, it's very painful, but the pain is over quickly, it's not prolonged. So that's how I decided to approach the low-tier German ace tankers in Arty. I decided that, you know, I hadn't got ace tankers in pretty much any of the low-tier Germans because I played them on day one or day two of installing World of Tanks a long, long time ago. And as I mentioned in a confession, that I didn't even know there was an artillery view. So I ended up playing all the low-tier German arty as tank destroyers, and I didn't enjoy them very much, but I still got to tier 4 before realizing that arty was a class and there was such a thing as artillery view. So this is another tier 3 German artillery, just like the Vespa, where I played in tank destroyer mode first time round. And I ended up getting a 3rd class. That was the best I did before I was done with the grind. So it's another tank I had to rebuy in order to get the ace in it. But I'm happy I did because once again I get to talk about the tank. It's very, very interesting. And as the name suggests, 15cm SIG 33. Yeah, that's what this artillery piece is. Well, technically it's not really an artillery piece. It's considered an infantry gun. And the rest of the name is Auf Panzerkampfwagen 1, Aus B. So basically it is an artillery piece, a SIG 33 on a Panzer 1. That's what it is. Panzer 1 chassis with, quite simply, they stuck an artillery piece on top of it and left it there. So they added a gun shield and that's pretty much it. They just mounted it at the back and at the wheels, and yeah. Very, very simple tank, very, very simple artillery. And, you know, it needed to be simple because basically it was designed in 1940, once again by Alket, who were also instrumental in designing the Vespa that I talked about on a video earlier, and also instrumental in turning a lot of captured tanks into artillery pieces by adding artillery guns onto them. So, you know, this is another tank that Alket designed, and in 1940, after the Blitzkrieg into Poland, basically the artillery had problems keeping up with the tanks. The tanks were just too fast. Now, a lot of the towed artillery wasn't actually towed by vehicles, it was towed by horses. So obviously, they're going to have a lot more trouble keeping up with the tanks. So in order to resolve this problem, they had a very simple solution. You know, Germany approached Alket and said, could you do something about this? And Alket said, yes. We'll take the towed artillery pieces and we'll stick them on tanks so they can keep up with the tanks. So this is, as I say, what you got. You got a very, very simple fixed solution of a artillery gun on a Panzer 1. But that led to its own problems because basically you had this very, very large gun shield. This large gun shield basically was very, very tall. It meant that this tank was far, far taller than the Panzer 1 it was based on, so therefore it was harder to conceal, harder to camouflage. So, you know, that was a problem. Also, it was far too top heavy. The Panzer 1 didn't have a lot of horsepower, so this was quite a heavy artillery artillery gun or infantry gun, and as a result the tank was top heavy. It was too heavy for the chassis, and it led to a lot of reliability and mechanical problems. So it wasn't very good. The other thing is, you may notice, is there's absolutely no room in this tank for ammunition. So while they did solve the problem with an artillery gun being able to keep up, assuming it didn't break down with the other tanks, then it got into position with the other tanks and had absolutely no ammo, because the ammo also had to be towed and brought to the gun. So this is a tank that had a lot of problems, and as a result only 38 of them were built by Alket in 1940. As far as combat history goes, they were involved in Operation Barbarossa during the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, and the last mention of them involved in combat was in 1943, so I'm not quite sure if any of them actually survived the war, but basically they weren't very successful. They had a lot of problems, as I mentioned, and the crews didn't like them very much because, as I say, they weren't reliable, and also you may notice with this large gun shield that made the tank very, very top heavy, it gave absolutely no protection to the loaders. So the gunner was fine, he had protection, but the loaders had absolutely none. So they, the crews didn't like them either, and they were phased out for other tanks designed by Alket, tanks like the Vespa and later on the Hummel. So the Bison, not a particularly successful tank, but it was quite interesting. Another interesting thing about the Bison, game-wise or in-game-wise, is something I had absolutely no idea about the first time I played the tank, and that was the ammunition choices, because, strangely enough, this tank comes with 2 standard HE shells. Yes, it comes with 2 standard types of credit-bought HE, and it comes with premium ammunition as well. So it comes with 3 types of ammunition. Now, as you can see here, I've got no premium ammunition loaded, but I did load up one type, the basic shell, the shell that comes on the tank when you buy the gun and buy the tank for the first time, and I loaded up a lot of the second type of shell. Now, this is not premium. These 2 are both standard HE, and I left one shell in the tank because I figured that when I got the Ace, I would be able to pop down here and show you the difference between Type 1 and Type 2 of the HE on the tank, but it's obviously not working, so I wasted my time. The replays don't let me show the ammunition information anymore for some reason, but basically this first type of ammunition has 75mm of penetration and 350 damage. So the penetration is very nice and the alpha damage is quite good for a tier 3, 350. The second type, and it costs 400 credits a round. The second type of HE costs 480 credits. So for just 80 credits more, what you get is an HE shell that has 75mm of penetration, just like the first type, but it gets 450 alpha damage. So this one, 350, this one 450, and the only difference other than 100 extra alpha damage is that the second type of shell costs 80 credits more. So there you go. Unless you are absolutely stuck for credits, there is absolutely no point in basically buying or installing the first type of HE. The second HE is much, much better, has bigger, I believe it has a similar splash radius, I'm not quite sure, but you get much more alpha damage at just 80 credits a shot. And you'll also notice that the tank doesn't carry a lot of ammunition, because this is a tank that has a lot of problems. Among the other weaknesses, including not having a lot of ammunition and having to run out of ammunition constantly, is it's got poor traverse speed. This tank turns like an absolute brick. It has really, really bad traverse speed. It has a really, really slow shell velocity. It takes forever for the shell to hit the target. I mean, you could fire and it feels like 2, possibly 3 seconds before your shell impacts, so it's very hard to hit moving targets, and it's also hard to hit stationary targets because they could be stationary. You fire, and while the shell is in the air, they decide to move, and therefore you've missed. The short range of the gun is only 600 meters, so unfortunately the fire range is not as good as it is on the tier 2 or the other tier 3, the Vespa. So it means you've got to get a lot closer to enemy tanks if you're actually going to hit them, and that's always dangerous in arty. The reload is incredibly slow, just like it is on the Vespa, and the aim time is not particularly good. So it's not a very mobile, it's not a very accurate, and the rate of fire is terrible. So, it's got a lot of problems, just like it did in real life. But there are some strengths. As I say, the you get high penetration for its tier. It's got nice penetration for an arty. The alpha damage is very, very nice if you're using the second type of HE, 450. It's got a very nice splash radius for its tier, so you can splash tanks a lot easier than, for example, low tier British arty. And the other really, really nice thing is the gun elevation. The gun elevation is very, very good, and that means that it's got a very, very high shell trajectory, and that means you can hit tanks behind walls. Just like British arty, very high shell trajectory means that it's very hard for enemy tanks, or much harder for them to hide behind walls and behind cover when you're driving a Bison. So it does have some strengths, but it just has a heck of a lot of weaknesses. Anyway, let's get on with the replay, because we've got Dreadshells here. You can see I'm platooned with Dreadshells. You see, I was playing all these low-tier Germans, and Dreadshells popped on to TeamSpeak, and he goes, "Hey, what are you up to?" And I was there alone, and I said, "I'm having to play low-tier German arty. I'm going to try and ace all the low-tier German arty. I've got the tier 1, one of the tier 3s out of the way, and just moving on to the Bison." And he said, well, hang on, I'll join you. I've been meaning to play this Locust. This Locust was a gift, and I haven't had an opportunity to play it on the EU server yet. It's a low-tier game, so, you know, why not? I'll platoon with you, I'll spot for you, I'll help you get your low-tier German aces. So, there we go. That's it. That's why Dreadshells is platooned with me. So, yeah, there we go. Oh, there we go. Normal speed. Or is that normal speed, or is it still too fast? That's half speed. That's normal speed. So, a little bit of ram damage from a medium one. You know, oh dear, enemy team tomatoes ignore chat. But as you can see, 600 meters of shot range. The gun arc is very, very narrow. Forgot to mention the gun arc. You can see from the minimap the gun arc isn't particularly good, so you got to traverse the hull in order to try and hit enemy tanks. And I'm moving up onto this little ridge here that I tend to use a lot with low-tier arty, and I'm pre-aiming over to the D7 area because Dreadshells is scouting for me. Dreadshells, incredibly kind, said he was going to help me get my low-tier aces, and so he's a guest star on this particular video, and guess what? He's going to be a guest star on the next couple of videos as well, because we were extremely successful in getting all the low-tier arty out of the way on one evening. So, you know, that was nice. So there we go. Dreadshells has just spotted a medium 3. I get to play low-tier arty, and I get a competent teammate and a competent scout to spot for me, and, you know, he gets to play his Locust in low-tier European games. So, you know, it was a win-win. So, anyway, first shot in there, medium 3, only 144 splash damage, but only 144 splash damage, so the splash radius is quite good on this arty, and we're just waiting for spots. So Dread is basically doing his best to try and spot. The Locust doesn't have amazing view range, but and also because it's his European account, I assume that Dread's crew aren't particularly good, and because he's always low on credits on his EU account, because he tends not to play with premium, you know, I don't know whether or not he's got a lot of equipment on the Locust, but he's doing what he can, and in the meantime I'm just swinging around looking for shots. Now, okay, you can see that the aim time is just about 6.5 seconds, probably closer, a little bit closer to 8 or 7 seconds, so aim time not particularly good for a tier 3, still aiming, and you can see the very, very narrow gun arc. I would have had to go through that entire reload, or aim time again, had I moved the hull of my tank. So look how wide it is, look how long it's taking to aim. So narrow gun arc doesn't help this artillery. It hits hard, it's got great penetration. When it does hit, it's usually going to do a lot of damage or knock out enemy tanks. The trick is actually hitting enemy tanks. So shot here, and boom. That fell maybe a couple of meters away from the STRV, but unfortunately 0 damage. And in the meantime, Dreadshells has moved up to the D line. He's spotting up here. He's asking me, can I support him? There was an IKV sitting here on the rocks, so I'm aiming, and there's no sign of him. So Dread poked again and said, nope, he's obviously retreated, no sign of him. So lots and lots of tanks up in the A1, A2 area. Dread has got an IKV 103 backing up, but it looks like the enemy team are getting a little bit aggressive, so I decide I'm going to try and help Dread. The SAV takes out the IKV, Dread is moving in, I take a shot without being fully aimed, and, you know, the gun was just at the edge of its gun arc, and as a result I had to go through the aim time again. Now an AT2 has decided to get a little bit aggressive, and we're aiming, and I'm asking Dread, can you spot the AT2 again? I'm going to have a shot in a couple of moments, so come on. I think Dread is just staying safe until he drops off radar, make sure nothing is spotting him. So he pokes out, spots the AT2 because of the long shell time, and you could see because I had to move the hull, unfortunately the aim time was aim time was inaccurate again, and that shot falls low. So yeah, I'm down to 7 rounds already. I've done nothing in this game. I'm down to 7 rounds. And that's the problem with the Bison. You know, you need to be hitting targets, and it's quite hard to hit the target in this RT. So taking shots that don't have a high percentage chance of hitting, sometimes not worth it in the Bison because you just don't have the ammunition. So I tell Dread, listen, I've got to support the north. There's a Churchill up here, Panzer 4H. I thought he was going to derp the SFL 4C, but it turns out the 4C managed to survive. No, he did get derped. So Panzer 4H is doing some work. The Panzer T25 is in trouble as well. So, you know, 3 enemy tanks up here were under pressure. I'm trying to support them, and the aim time, not fun. I've only got 7 rounds. I noticed that the Churchill has been tracked. So this is a tier 3 arty, and once again shooting tier 5 tanks. And I don't know where that shot went, but because there was no impact, I think that may have been a blind hit on the Churchill. So we've got 2 tanks trying to cap, but they're being prevented by an enemy tank who also happens to be in cap. So yeah, it's not looking so good. We've got a Sturmpanzer 2, and we've got the Sturmpanzer 1 Bison, i.e. me, and we're the only tanks left in cap. And in the meantime, we've got 2 players trying to cap, and we've got tanks moving up into enemy spawn. So enemy RT isn't going to be a problem. Dread is up there along with a Panzer 4H and a Panzer 3J, but we've got to basically try and help the cappers and hope that the enemy tanks that won the A1, A2 area don't come down and flank us. So not much to shoot at, but we go for the 103 and miss him, but splash for 73. So, you know, yeah, under a lot of pressure. We've just lost our Stug 4, the A20 is on 12 hit points, and he goes down. And yeah, we've just lost 2 tanks in quick succession, so we lost both our cappers. In the meantime, Panzer 3J takes out the M7 Priest. AT2 is keeping these guys under pressure. And yeah, IKV 103 needs to die. He needs to die. So we're going to swing around, and you can see it's taking me forever to get into a position to hit him. He goes down to the Panzer 3J, so it's just the AT2 who's causing the guys up north problems, but we've also got an STRV and we've got a Churchill who are flanking us, currently flanking us. There's the STRV. So got to deal with these flankers. Do have shots because of this high shell trajectory on the Bison, but he's got into an RT safe position. It's amazing how often players do this unintentionally or not knowing they're RT safe, whereas a couple of meters forward, a couple of meters back, they wouldn't be quite so RT safe. So we've got shots, but unfortunately he's on the move, and you can see I'm at the edge of my reticule. Have to go through this aim time again, edge of my gun arc I should say, and now he's RT safe again because I'm trying to shoot him through a building, and oh, it's not looking good. I mean, we're winning technically 4 versus 3, but there are 3 enemy tier 5s left, and we've got a tier 4, 2 tier 3s, and a tier 5 up against them. So I set up here for an ambush. I'm just waiting for the STRV to drive around. Now, unfortunately, one of the things that's not good about the Bison, forgot to mention it, is it's got 0 gun depression. So if you are using it on a slope, it sometimes can be difficult to get a shot, which is why I was leaning forward in the tank to make up for the 0-degree gun depression. But we get a nice shot into the STRV, we reverse back down into safety. We know where pretty much all the remaining enemy tanks are. Dread is gone in on the STRV. He's currently safe for the Churchill 3. So he's going to need some help taking out the Churchill 3, but I'm relocating to try and support Dread, and just need him to hang around, spot the Churchill 3, and maybe we can go to work. So I've relocated, and I'm being told, run, Bison, run, but I've got 4 shells left, just 4 shells left. We've got an AT2 and a Churchill 1 to take out. And you know, there's no guarantee I'm going to be able to do damage to these tanks, because if I hit them on well-armored areas, the damage is either going to be 0 or very, very low. So, on the other hand, if I hit them in weak areas, then maybe I can one-hit kill them, even though they're tier 5s. So, you know, waiting for Dread, he's continually relocating, popping up in areas he's not expected. He's gone the long way around to try and spot the Churchill 3. I'm in a bush in the middle of the map, so I've got a good range of fire. The 82 is behind me, but the Churchill is more important, so he's been spotted, and this is where the accuracy is just sucks. While basically you've got good gun trajectory, and I can shoot this guy, you can see how bad the accuracy on the gun is. So the trick is actually trying to hit enemy tanks, but we missed the Churchill. Dread's under pressure, just taking a big hit, and he's out of there. So almost reloaded, almost reloaded. We're constantly communicating on TS, and now he's in RT Shadow, so he's safe. But Dread has got backup from the Panzer IIIJ moving in. He's staying on the move, staying away from the Churchill 3. I've got a shot. He's come around the corner. Fire! And we do 178 damage, and that allows basically the Panzer IIIJ to kill him with one shot. So I'm down to 2 rounds left and still an AT2 left to go. So once again, the Panzer IV-H is pinned down by the AT2, and Dread is on the way to either try and track him or distract him. And really, I'm going to do my best to try and kill the AT2, but incredibly well armored. I've only got about 75mm of penetration, and this guy has up to 200mm of armor, so I know I'm probably not going to penetrate the AT2 unless I can land a shot in his engine deck, but what I can do is shave off some of his health. Except there we go. That was splash for 0 damage. So the shot wasn't accurate. Splashed for 0 damage because, yeah, this gun not accurate. The AT2 incredibly well armored. So Dread is moving in. He's basically going to try and track the AT2. I'm telling Dread I'm on the last shot. I'm aimed. I'm firing, and 57 damage done. So we take out the AT2 for the first kill of the game, believe it or not. That's the first kill of the game. Last shell in the tank. So we picked up the Ace, and we picked up the Faden's Medal for destroying the last enemy vehicle with the last round in my tank. So yeah, not that difficult to do when you get so little ammo to begin with. We finished top, or we didn't finish top. Dreadshells finished top with 740 XP. I finished up with 717, so that was enough to actually pick up an Ace in the Bison, and we did 800 damage, which was a little bit better than I was expecting. So we only managed 1 kill, but as I say, this tank, the Bison, incredibly inaccurate. It's quite a tricky RT to use because of the just so many negatives, but it does hit hard. It's got good penetration, it's got good alpha damage, as long as you're using the better type of HE shell. So when you do hit, you do damage, but you can see how difficult it is to hit using the Bison because it's just so inaccurate, and even a result like that's enough for an Ace. But then again, we were shooting tier 5, so I suppose that helps. We fired 12, only hit 5, pen 5, and 3 splash damage. So just like the Vespa, the rate of fire is not good, but also it's got about a 50% hit rate. So just like the Vespa game, about a 50% hit rate. As I say, about 800 damage, damage 5, destroyed 1 to 300 assistance damage, and made a loss. Made a loss because I was using a premium consumable on the RT just to try and get through it more quickly. So, you know, 1075 XP overall. But once again, I'm very happy to get the tank out of the way. It only took maybe 2, possibly 3 games. Maybe that was the second. I don't remember. But Dreadshells was very kind to guest star. He came in, helped me with a lot of the low-tier German arty, as you're going to see on some upcoming videos, because as soon as I was done with the Bison, I sold it and bought the next German artillery I never aced first time round on day 1 or day 2 of playing World of Tanks. So that's going to be coming to the channel along with Dreadshells very, very soon. The Bison, it's done, it's dusted, it's sold, it's out of the way. I don't think I'll ever be rebuying the tank, so but I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.